When you say combat reporter, it usually brings to mind the picture of a battered, unshaven, weary correspondent trudging through the mud. Now, this lady, she is a woman who has covered 7 wars in the past 5 years, and her name is Dickie Chappell.
November 3rd, Milwaukee Public Television presents Behind the Pearl Earrings, the story of Dickie Chappell.
It's very honorable what she did, and I'm shocked that people don't know who she was.
And I had never heard of Dickie Chappell in my entire life. She did something that was not very common at a time where it was not easy to do what she did.
Her pictures were dramatic, but they also told a story. She had to prove herself, and God knows she did.
The sum of her core was that she really was doing this because she felt she was doing the right thing. She felt that her gender should never get in the way.
I mean, it never crossed my mind not to raise my hand to go to Iraq because I'm female. Is that because of Dickie Chappell? Absolutely.
Those pearl rings were a trademark of hers.
She's working in a man's world, at a man's game in combat, but she wanted to preserve just that bit of femininity.
She certainly was very much her own person and a little out of the mainstream in terms of the things that she enjoyed and was promoting.
She was way ahead of her time. I think she was brave.
Combat, war, blood and guts and all of that both horrified and fascinated her.
Who threw you into solitary, and how you stayed there for 52 days? Tell us about that.
Hungarians accused me of being illegally in Hungary.
You have to have an inner core of absolute steel to survive something like that and not go crazy.
Here's a girl who also parachuted into the combat area in Vietnam. But what in the world ever persuaded you to parachute the first time, and what was it like? Do you remember what it felt like?
I thought I was going to be killed.
She was one of us. She went out to get the story, and she got the story. And there was no BS about her. I mean, there was no hand-holding.
Having a camera does provide that sort of sense of mediation. You're out of the moment because you're focusing on something else. And so I think that the focus probably helped her continue to move forward. Camera was probably her shield.
She was a respected photojournalist and comrade who wore her love for the Marines on her sleeve.
She was more of a Marine than a lot of Marines were.
Milwaukee's pioneering female journalist, who was the first female American war reporter killed in combat.
I remember my dad receiving the phone call and sitting down and, sort of that sense, well, he had always been afraid that this would happen, and it finally happened.
I don't think any journalist goes to war to die. It's, you go to war to survive it, but not everybody does.
That was such a shock. Such a shock.
I had been surrounded by death and dying, and now I find out my friend, Dickie Chappell, had been killed, and just cried like a baby. She meant that much to me.
Behind the Pearl Earrings, November 3rd at 7 on MPTV.
The thing that sticks in my mind is that she said the main thing you have to always remember about covering combat is you've got to survive to get the story and the pictures out to the world. If you get killed in there, it's all for nothing.
Dickie Chappell Under Fire by John Garofolo, a Wisconsin Historical Society Press publication, is now available at booksellers everywhere.